Maya Chen stepped off the transport shuttle with her bag over her shoulder and dreams in her eyes. At 22 years old, she had graduated top of her class from the Terran Naval Academy. Now she was here at Forward Station Kestrel, ready to serve humanity among the stars. The station floated at the edge of human space, a metal fortress watching over the darkness. Inside, the corridors hummed with activity. Soldiers walked past her without a second glance. She was just another fresh face, another rookie who knew nothing about real combat. "Ensign Chen, reporting for duty, sir," she said, saluting the duty officer. The man barely looked up from his console. "Communications Department. Deck 7. Don't touch anything important." Maya's heart sank a little. Communications was where they put people they didn't trust with weapons. But she nodded and found her way to her new station. The communications room was quieter than she expected. Rows of monitors displayed star maps, transmission logs, and patrol routes. Her supervisor, a tired-looking woman named Lieutenant Reeves, showed her the basic systems.
Ow!
"Your job is simple," Reeves said. "Monitor frequencies. Log everything. If something looks strange, report it. Don't try to be a hero." For 3 weeks, Maya did exactly that. She logged transmissions. She monitored frequencies. She watched the stars and learned the patterns of normal space traffic. It was boring work, but she studied everything. She learned which ships belonged to the Corinthian Empire, which ones were independent traders, which routes were safe. The Corinthians were one of the older species in the galaxy. They were warriors, tall and covered in dark scales, with a culture built on honor and conquest. Humans had been in space for only 43 years. The Corinthians had ruled their sector for over 2,000. On her 24th day at the station, everything changed. Maya was monitoring the regular frequencies when a distress signal cut through the static. Her fingers flew across the console, isolating the transmission. What she heard made her blood run cold. "This is Harmony Colony. We're under attack. Corinthian raiders, they're killing everyone. Please, somebody help us." The voice belonged to a young girl, maybe 12 years old. Maya could hear weapons, fire in the background, screaming, the sound of metal tearing. She immediately patched the signal. Through to the command center. Within minutes, the senior officers were gathered, watching the feeds from Harmony Colony. 2,000 civilians lived there, mostly miners and their families. On the screens, Corinthian ships circled the small settlement like predators. "We need to send help," Maya said to Lieutenant Reeves. Reeves shook her head sadly. "Closest battle group is 3 days away? By the time they arrive, ... so we do nothing?" Maya's voice was louder than she intended. Commander Walsh, the station's commanding officer, turned to face her. "Ensign, we have 40 personnel on this station and no combat ships. Harmony Colony is 4 light years away. There's nothing we can do except watch and record evidence for the War Crimes Tribunal." Maya looked back at the screens. The little girl was still broadcasting, crying for her mother. Other families were running through the streets as Corinthian soldiers hunted them down. The raiders weren't just attacking, they were taking their time, enjoying it. Something inside Maya snapped. She returned to her station and started working. Her fingers moved across the controls with desperate speed. The academy had taught her communications, but she had studied much more than that. Computer systems, navigation protocols, autonomous ship controls. There was an automated cargo hauler in the nearby system, she remembered. A massive ship designed to move or from asteroid mines to processing stations. No crew, just a navigation AI following programmed routes. Maya's console wasn't supposed to have access to navigation systems. But she had spent 3 weeks learning every system on the station. She knew where the security gaps were. She hacked through 3 firewalls, her heart pounding. Warning messages flashed on her screen, but she ignored them. She found the cargo hauler's controls and overrode its safety protocols. The ship was carrying 15,000 tons of refined titanium ore. Maya reprogrammed its course, aimed it at the coordinates where the Corinthian flagship was hovering above Harmony Colony, and set its engines to maximum acceleration.
Chan.
What are you doing? Lieutenant Reeves appeared behind her. Saving them, Maya whispered. On the main screens, the massive cargo hauler appeared from hyperspace. The Corinthians had 4 seconds to react. They did in single quotes of metal and/or struck the flagship at 30% the speed of light. The explosion was like a small sun being born. The Corinthian flagship simply ceased to exist. The shockwave damaged to other raider ships and sent the rest scrambling for safety. The raiders fled. Within 10 minutes, Harmony Colony was safe. Maya sat at her console, staring at her shaking hands. She had just killed thousands of Corinthians. The command center was completely silent. Commander Walsh walked over slowly. Ensign Chen, you are under arrest for unauthorized use of military assets and violations of engagement protocols. She expected this. Yes, sir. But the colony is safe, Miss Walsh said quietly. The colony is safe. They put her in a holding cell while the investigation began. Maya waited for 3 days, expecting a court-martial in prison. Instead, intelligence officers arrived from Earth. We've been monitoring Corinthian communications, one of them explained. They're talking about the attack. They've identified that a human was responsible, though they don't know who yet. What are they saying? Maya asked. The intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. They've given you a name. In their language, it translates to Ashmaker, the one who turns fleets to ash. They're afraid of you. I didn't know how to respond to that. The investigation concluded that while her actions violated protocol, she had saved 2,000 lives. The political situation was complicated. Humanity was still new to galactic politics, still proving itself worthy of respect. A week later, Maya stood before Commander Walsh again. The court-martial has been dismissed, he said. Instead, you're being transferred. The TSNS Valkyrie needs a tactical analyst. Captain Okonkwo specifically requested you, the Valkyrie. That's a frontline frigate. Yes, it seems your reputation has preceded you. Walsh almost smiled. Dismissed Ashmaker, Maya left Forward Station Kestrel the next morning. As her transport pulled away, she looked back at the station where her life had changed forever. She had joined the Navy to serve humanity, to protect people. She hadn't expected to become something the enemy feared, but as the transport jumped to hyperspace, carrying her toward her new assignment and an uncertain future, Maya understood one thing clearly. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Humans were newcomers here, weak and inexperienced. If fear was the only weapon she had to protect her people, then she would learn to use it well. Behind her, in the dark spaces between stars, Corinthian commanders were already sharing warnings about the human who had killed a war prince. They spoke her name in hushed tones. This Ashmaker, who had appeared from nowhere and struck like lightning. The novice's journey had begun. The TSNS Valkyrie was nothing like Forward Station Kestrel. Where the station had been quiet and organized, the frigate buzzed with constant energy. Crew members moved with purpose through the narrow corridors, and the hum of the engines was a living thing beneath Maya's feet. Captain James Okonkwo was a legend in the Terran Navy. He had fought in the First Contact Wars, survived 3 ship destructions, and earned more medals than most admirals. When Maya reported to his office, she expected judgment or suspicion. Instead, he offered her tea. Sit down, Lieutenant Chen, he said. The promotion had come with her transfer. I've read your file. Interesting reading. Sir, about what happened at Forward Station, you saved 2,000 lives by breaking every rule we have. Okonkwo's dark eyes studied her. The question is, was it genius or luck? Maya met his gaze. Both, sir, but mostly desperation. Okonkwo laughed, a deep, genuine sound. Honest. Good. I need tactical analysts who can think differently. The Corinthians are raiding our colonies faster than we can respond. Traditional tactics aren't working. Maybe you can see something we're missing. He assigned her to the Tactical Analysis Department. It was a small office filled with star maps and intelligence reports. Her job was to study enemy movements and predict their next targets. For the first week, Maya felt lost. The data was overwhelming. Dozens of raids across 10 systems, seemingly random attacks on civilian targets, research stations, transport ships, small mining outfits. The Corinthians were hitting everywhere at once. But Maya had learned something at the academy that most people forgot. Patterns existed in everything. You just had to look from the right angle. She started studying Corinthian culture, their history, their social structures. The Corinthians didn't just raid randomly, they raided based on honor debts and status hierarchies. Each ship captain was trying to prove themselves worthy of promotion. They chose targets that would bring them glory. Maya began mapping the raids not by location, but by which Corinthian clan claimed responsibility. Suddenly, the pattern appeared like stars forming a constellation. She burst into Captain Okonkwo's office at 0300 hours. "The next target is the research station at Kepler 442, she said, spreading data across his desk. 3 days from now. The raiding party will be led by Captain Vrex of the Bloodscale clan. He needs a major victory to challenge his superior for clan leadership." Okonkwo looked at her analysis. "You're certain?" 90% certain, sir. Then we'll be there waiting. The Valkyrie reached Kepler 442 days later, along with 2 allied cruisers Okonkwo had called in. They positioned themselves in the shadow of a gas giant, powered down, and waited. Maya spent those 2 days barely sleeping, second-guessing every calculation. What if she was wrong? What if she had sent 3 warships to guard an empty station while people died somewhere else? On the 3rd day, exactly when her analysis predicted, 5 Corinthian raiders dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442. All ships. Battle stations, Okonkwo ordered calmly. Ashmaker's prediction was correct. Let's make them regret coming here, eh? The ambush was devastating. The Corinthians expected an easy target. Instead, they found 3 warships emerging from hiding with weapons hot. 2 Corinthian raiders were destroyed in the first minute. The others tried to flee, but the human ships had positioned themselves to block the escape routes. When it was over, Maya watched the casualty reports scroll across her screen. Over 3,000 Corinthian soldiers dead. 0 human casualties. The research station was safe. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt sick. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing the Corinthian ships exploding, kept calculating how many individuals had been on each vessel. They were the enemy, yes. They would have killed everyone on that research station. But she had lured them into a trap, using her understanding of their culture against them. Captain Okonkwo found her in the observation deck at 0200 hours. Staring out at the stars, first time setting a trap, he asked, joining her at the window. "Yes, sir." "It doesn't get easier," he said quietly. "Every tactical decision has a body count. The only question is, whose bodies? Ours or theirs?" "They followed their honor codes," Maya said. "I studied their culture just to use it as a weapon." "Yes, that's why you're good at this." Okonkwo's reflection in the window was serious. The galaxy is full of species who fight by their own rules. They expect enemies to fight the same way. Humans don't have that luxury. We're too new, too weak. So we learn, we adapt, and we fight smarter. Over the next 4 months, Maya predicted 17 more raids. The success rate was terrifying. The Valkyrie and its support ships became known as the Ghost Squadron because they appeared wherever the Corinthians attacked. Intercepted communications showed that the enemy was changing. They briefed their commanders about Ashmaker before every mission now. Some Corinthian captains refused assignments in sectors where the Ghost Squadron operated. Others sought glory by specifically trying to face the legendary human tactician. Maya's method spread through the Terran Navy. Other analysts started studying enemy psychology and cultural patterns. Human ships began winning engagements they should have lost, simply by understanding their opponents better than the opponents understood themselves. But victories came with costs. During a raid on a convoy, Maya predicted the Corinthians would attack from 2 directions. She positioned the Valkyrie to block one route and sent a small patrol to watch the other. The prediction was correct, but the patrol was destroyed before reinforcements could arrive. 14 crew members died. Maya wrote letters to every family. She included personal details about how their loved ones had served, what they had meant to the mission. She didn't sleep for 3 days afterward. Captain Okonkwo found her in her office, surrounded by draft letters and cold coffee. "The weight never gets lighter," he told her. "You just get stronger. Does it matter?" Maya's voice was hollow. 14 people are dead because I positioned them there. 14 people died protecting a convoy of 600 civilians, Okonkwo corrected. "If you hadn't predicted that attack, the convoy would have been destroyed. Sometimes there are no good choices, Lieutenant. Only less terrible ones." Intelligence reports showed that the Corinthians now called her Ashmaker, who sees tomorrow. The myth was growing beyond the reality. Some enemy commanders believed she had psychic powers. Others thought she was an artificial intelligence, pretending to be human. The truth was simpler, somehow more frightening. She was just a human who paid attention, who studied her enemies and learned to think like them. 6 months after joining the Valkyrie, Maya was promoted to lieutenant commander. At 23 years old, she was one of the youngest senior officers in the fleet. The Novice was becoming something else, something the enemy feared. But Maya wondered, if she understood aliens better than she understood humans anymore, what did that make her? Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the Corvette Phantom, watching 3 ships maneuver through the darkness. After a year of successful operations on the Valkyrie, she had been given her own command, a small task force of 3 fast-tack corvettes, designed for hit-and-run operations. The promotion had come with a new challenge. The Corinthians were retreating from human space. But a worse threat had emerged. The Vryn hierarchy. The Vryn were reptilian creatures who had ruled their empire for 5,000 years. Where the Corinthians raided for honor and glory, the Vryn killed for ideology. They viewed humans as an infestation, a species that had no right to exist among the stars. Their attacks were systematic, professional, brutal. 3 human colonies had been completely destroyed in the past month. No survivors. No negotiations. Just total extermination. Commander Chen, her communications officer, called out, "We're receiving strategic briefing from Fleet Command." The message was clear. Maya's task force was being sent behind enemy lines. Their mission was guerrilla warfare, hit supply lines, disrupt communications, and make the Vryn pay for every inch of space they claimed. Maya gathered her 3 crews for a briefing. 90 personnel total, all volunteers who had heard of Ashmaker and wanted to serve under her command. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," she told them honestly. "The Vryn have better ships, more resources, and thousands of years of military experience. We cannot fight them fairly and win." She paused, meeting the eyes of her crews. "So we won't fight fair. We'll be shadows. We'll be nightmares. Every time they think they understand us, we'll change. Every victory they expect will become a trap. We won't give them battle, we'll give them fear." This became known as the Shadow Doctrine. Never be predictable. Never fight on the enemy's terms. Make every human encounter cost more than the enemy could calculate. Their first operation was against Vina Supply Depot in the Arcturus system. The depot was defended by 6 warships, each one capable of destroying Maya's entire task force. Traditional tactics said to avoid it. Maya's doctrine said to hit it differently. She studied the Vryn supply chains for 2 weeks. She learned that they used automated drones to deliver supplies, drones that followed strict programming and security protocols. The Vryn trusted their technology completely because it had worked perfectly for centuries. Maya's team hacked one of the drones during a supply run. They didn't steal supplies or plant bombs. Instead, they uploaded a subtle virus into the drone's navigation system. The virus spread through the supply network like a silent disease. 2 weeks later, 73 Vryn supply drones began delivering cargo to the wrong locations. Medical supplies went to combat units. Weapon shipments went to research stations. Food supplies went to empty space. The Vryn supply system collapsed into chaos. Maya's task force didn't fire a single shot. But the enemy lost 2 months of strategic positioning while they rebuilt their logistics network, intercepted. Communications showed the Vryn creating a new designation for her, the Ghost Who Poisons Stars. Their second major operation was riskier. Intelligence had located a Vryn staging ground where they were massing 30 warships for an assault on the colony. World of New Haven, 300,000. Humans lived on New Haven. They couldn't evacuate in time. Maya's 3 corvettes couldn't fight 30 warships. She knew that. Her crews knew that. But they went anyway. The plan was insane. Maya identified the Vryn Admiral's flagship through signal intelligence. Then she studied Vryn ship maintenance procedures. Learned about their synthetic hull, sealant, a special compound that kept their ships airtight in the vacuum of space. She found a weakness. The sealant was vulnerable to a specific type of engineered fungus that humans used in terraforming operations. The fungus ate the synthetic compound, but was harmless to humans. Maya's team hacked into the Vryn supply drones again. They contaminated what appeared to be standard ship rations with containers of the fungus, carefully packaged to remain dormant until exposed to the specific temperature inside. Vryn ships. The contaminated supplies were delivered to the fleet. The fungus activated within 48 hours. The synthetic sealant on every ship in the staging ground began degrading. The entire Vryn fleet had to dock for emergency repairs. By the time they were spaceworthy again, New Haven had been reinforced with human battle groups. The Vryn called off the assault. Maya had saved 300,000 lives without firing a weapon. But success came with a price. During the extraction from the Arcturus system, one of her corvettes, the Shadow, was caught by a Vryn patrol. The crew fought to give the other 2 ships time to escape. Maya watched on her screens as the Shadow was overwhelmed and destroyed. 14 crew members, again, she knew their names. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, who told terrible jokes. Ensign Sarah Kimura, who played violin during off hours. Chief Engineer David Torres, who had a daughter graduating from the academy. Next month, Maya returned to human space and spent 3 days writing letters to families. Each letter was personal. Each one explained how their loved one had helped save a colony. Each one carried the weight of her decisions. Captain Okonkwo visited her on the Phantom. He was older now, grayer, but his eyes were still sharp. 14 people, Maya said quietly. The same number as before. Different people. Same weight. Okonkwo sat across from her. You saved 300,000 this time. That's the calculus of command. It never gets easier to accept. Does it ever feel worth it? Every day and never, he said. That's what separates good commanders from great ones. Good commanders learn to ignore the cost. Great commanders carry it and keep fighting anyway. Maya's reputation continued to grow. The Vryn briefed their commanders about her before every operation. Some called her a demon. Others called her the most dangerous human in space. Her tactics were being studied and copied throughout the Terran Navy. The Shadow doctrine was officially adopted by Fleet Command. Human forces began fighting asymmetrically using intelligence and creativity instead of raw power. They won battles by understanding their enemies, by finding weaknesses that aliens didn't know they had. Maya Chen was 24 years old. She commanded 3 ships and fewer than 100 crew members. But her influence reached across human space. Admirals consulted her on strategy. Intelligence agencies requested her analysis. Enemy species spoke her name with fear. The Novice had become a legend. But late at night, lone in her cabin, Maya still saw the faces of the 14 who had died on the Shadow. She still wrote letters to families. She still carried the weight of every decision because that's what made her human. That's what made her dangerous. She understood the cost of victory and chose to pay it anyway. The summons arrived on a secure channel marked with the highest priority codes. Maya Chen was ordered to report to the Galactic Coalition headquarters on the neutral station Concordia. She would testify before the Council of Species about human military operations. This is a political trap. Captain Okonkwo warned her before she left. Multiple species are demanding we be restricted to our home system. They're afraid of us now. Of you specifically. Maya looked at the formal summons. 27 species signatures. The Corinthians. The Vrin, even some of humanity's supposed allies. What do I tell them? She asked. The truth, Okonkwo said, and let them choke on it. Concordia Station was massive, built thousands of years ago as neutral ground for galactic diplomacy. Maya arrived in her dress uniform, escorted by 2 diplomatic security officers. The corridors were filled with aliens of every description species that had ruled the stars, while humans still lived in caves. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. It was a vast circular room, with seats rising in tiers, making the person in the center feel small and exposed. Representatives from 47 species looked down at her as she entered. Maya stood in the center circle. Alone, the Vrin representative spoke first, his reptilian features cold with contempt. It's human. Designated ashmaker by multiple species, has conducted operations that violate the established codes of warfare. She uses deception, poisoning, and psychological warfare. She fights without honor, the Corinthian ambassador continued. She studies our cultures not for understanding, but to weaponize our traditions against us. She turns our own values into traps. This is not warfare, this is corruption. One by one, species presented evidence. Videos of Maya's operations, intercepted communications showing how enemy forces feared her. Testimony from military commanders who had lost battles to her tactics. They built a case that humans, Maya specifically, were too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. Finally, the council chairman, an ancient being from a species called the Mediator, spoke. Commander Chen, you have heard the accusations. How do you respond? Maya had prepared for this moment. She had written and rewritten her speech a dozen times. But standing in that circle, facing the judgment of species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, she abandoned her prepared words. You want me to apologize for winning? She asked. The chamber went silent. You want me to fight honorably, fairly, predictably? Like my enemies expect? She activated her wrist console, projecting images into the center of the chamber. This is Harmony Colony before the Corinthian raid. 2,000 civilians, mostly families. And this is what the honorable Corinthian warriors did when they attacked. The images showed the massacre. Children killed. Families burned. The Corinthian ambassador looked away. Maya changed the image. This is Colony 7, after the Vrin attacked. 300,000 humans lived there. The Vrin conducted a professional military operation according to their established warfare codes. The new images showed a planet burned from orbit. No survivors. You talk about honor and established codes of warfare. Maya's voice grew harder. Those codes were written by strong species to fight other strong species. What happens when a weak species tries to survive using your rules? She looked directly at the Vrin representative. You attacked us for existing. Not for resources. Not for territory. Because you decided we had no right to live among the stars? She turned to the Corinthian ambassador. Your warriors raid our colonies for glory. They take slaves and kill anyone who resists. And you call that honor? Maya's voice echoed in the silent chamber. Yes, I study your cultures. Yes, I use that knowledge as a weapon. Because that's all we have. Humans have been in space for 43 years. You've ruled your empires for thousands. We don't have your technology. We don't have your numbers. We don't have your experience. She paused, meeting the eyes of every ambassador who would look at her. So we adapt. We learn. We find ways to fight that you don't expect. You call it fighting without honor. I call it survival. The chairman raised a manipulator appendage. Commander Chen, do you deny that your methods cause psychological trauma to enemy forces? No, that's the point. Maya's response was immediate. Every human soldier lost is a tragedy because we're so few. Every enemy soldier who surrenders without fighting is a victory. If they fear us enough to avoid combat, that saves both human and alien lives. A new voice spoke from the upper tiers. It was Ambassador Tlan from the Meridian Collective, one of humanity's few allies. The Council should remember that humans did not start these conflicts. They responded to aggression with the tools they had available. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for restricting humanity to Sol system. Others defended humanity's right to self-defense. The chamber divided into factions. Finally, the vote was called. The result, no consensus. Humanity would not be restricted, but neither would they be fully embraced. The galaxy was split on the question of human warfare. As the session ended, Maya felt exhausted. She had defended her species, but she wondered at what cost. Had she made humanity safer, or just more feared? The Corinthian ambassador approached her as she left the chamber. He was old, his scales marked with the scars of many battles. "Ashmaker," he said, using her codename. "You spoke truth today. My people attacked yours for glory, and you made us pay for our arrogance." "Was that supposed to be an apology?" Maya asked. "No, a recognition." The ambassador's eyes were unreadable. "You have made my species see humans as we saw ourselves before the coalition tamed us dangerous. It's unpredictable, willing to do anything to survive. Some of my people wish to honor you. Others wish to prove you mortal." He leaned closer. "Be careful what legends you build, young warrior. They outlive the flesh that creates them. Someday you will be gone, but Ashmaker will remain. What will that legend do to your people?" Maya had no answer for that. She returned to the Phantom, where her crew waited anxiously for news. "We're not being restricted," she told them, "but we're not accepted either. The galaxy is afraid of us now." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Chen Park, smiled grimly. "Good. Fear keeps us alive." Maybe that was true. Maybe that was enough. But as Maya looked at the faces of her young crew, none of them over 30 years old, she wondered what kind of future they were building. A future where humans were respected, or just feared. The novice who had just wanted to serve her species had become the symbol of humanity's willingness to fight by any means necessary. The girl who had cried while listening to children die on Harmony Colony had become the commander who made empires. Fear human ingenuity. She was 24 years old, and the galaxy would never see humans as harmless again. 1 year after the council testimony, Commander Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the TSNS Valkyrie, now her flagship. She commanded a battle group of 20 ships destroyers, frigates, and corvettes crewed by volunteers who believed in her methods. She was 25 years old, the youngest flag officer in Terran history. The codenames had multiplied. Different species called her different things. Ashmaker, ghost who poisons stars, the pattern seer. Shadow without form. She had become more legend than person, but legends could bleed. And the galaxy was about to test that. Intelligence reports had been warning of unusual activity for months. Corinthian ships meeting Wit. Rin fleets. Other species, some humanity had never even fought, joining secret conferences. Something was building. The truth came on a cold morning when the sensors detected the largest alien fleet ever assembled. Over 800 warships from multiple species, all heading toward one destination: Earth. "How many ships do we have?" Maya asked Admiral Kaida, her superior officer. 200, scattered across 5 systems, Kaida replied. "We're outnumbered 4-1, and we can't concentrate our forces before they reach Earth." Maya studied the tactical displays. The enemy coalition was diverse Corinthians, seeking to redeem their honor after years of defeats. Rin determined to exterminate humanity once and for all, and others who simply wanted to prove that humans could be beaten. They had united against a common threat. The species that fought too differently, too creatively, too dangerously. "We can't match them ship to ship," Maya said quietly, "so we don't try." She called an emergency meeting of all Tehran commanders. Over secure channels, she presented her plan. It was insane. It violated every principle of fleet tactics. "We divide our forces," she explained. "Use our smaller, faster ships to splinter their formation. Draw them into dozens of smaller engagements across the solar system where numbers matter less than initiative." Admiral Kaida looked skeptical. "You want to break up our fleet and fight them piecemeal? That's suicide." Fighting them as a concentrated fleet is definitely suicide, Maya countered. They expect us to defend Earth directly. They expect traditional fleet tactics. We give them chaos instead. She showed them the analysis. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable than most enemy vessels. Human crews had been training in her shadow doctrine for 2 years. They knew how to fight unpredictably. We can't win a fair fight, Maya said. But we've never fought fair. Why start now? The plan was approved. Not because it was good, but because there were no better options. The enemy fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system 3 days later. 800 warships in a massive formation, moving toward Earth with terrible purpose. The human fleet scattered. Maya coordinated from the Valkyrie, positioned near Jupiter. She had studied the enemy fleet composition for weeks, identifying which species commanded which sections, understanding their cultural differences and communication protocols. The battle began with human ships attacking from unexpected angles. A squadron of corvettes struck the Corinthian flank and vanished before reinforcements could respond. Destroyers used the asteroid belt as cover, emerging to fire and disappearing again. Frigates led enemy groups into ambushes prepared by other human ships. Maya watched the tactical display, her mind processing hundreds of variables. She predicted enemy responses, directed ship movements, coordinated attacks across millions of miles of space. For 18 hours, she barely slept, barely ate. She made admirals with centuries of experience react to her tempo. She sacrificed pawns to capture queens. She made the enemy fight her battle, not theirs. The coalition fleet began to fracture. Different species had different tactical doctrines. When separated and pressured, they stopped coordinating effectively. The Corinthians fought for honor, charging into obvious traps. The Vryn fought methodically, making them predictable. Other species fought cautiously, making them ineffective. Humans exploited every weakness. At hour 16, Maya made her final gamble. She broadcast on all frequencies, identifying herself. She wanted every enemy commander to know who was coordinating the defense. This is Commander Maya Chen, designated Ashmaker, to all hostile forces. You came here expecting the humans you first met weak, inexperienced, fighting by your rules. We were novices once. You taught us well. The psychological effect was immediate. Enemy commanders who had been briefed about Ashmaker for years suddenly realized they were facing her directly. Some became more cautious. Others became reckless, trying to prove they could defeat the legend. Both reactions played into Maya's hands. At hour 18, the coalition fleet broke. Not retreated, broke. Ships began fleeing individually, some species abandoning others. The coordination that had brought them together shattered under sustained pressure. Humanity had won, not through superior numbers or technology, but through superior adaptation. The cost was heavy. 2,000 human casualties. 8 ships destroyed. But Earth was safe. Maya stood in the command center, surrounded by exhausted officers. They had done the impossible. They had defended their homeworld against overwhelming odds. Medals came, promotions, offers of political office. Maya refused them all. She requested only one thing: transfer back to Forward Station Kestrel, where it had all begun, to train the next generation. 3 months later, a new ensign arrived at the station. Her name was Sarah Rodriguez, 22 years old. Fresh from the academy with perfect scores and terrified of making mistakes, Maya met her at the docking bay. "Commander Chen?" Sarah's voice shook. Ashmaker." "I'm honored too, just Maya," she interrupted gently. "Come on, I'll show you around." As they walked through the station corridors, Sarah couldn't stop staring. "Everyone talks about you. The code names, the battles. How did you become ... this?" Maya stopped at an observation window overlooking the stars. She remembered standing here years ago, a scared rookie who had just killed thousands of people to save a colony. "I was terrified," she said honestly. "Every decision, every battle, I was so scared of making the wrong choice. The code names, the legends, they're useful for scaring the enemy, But they're not who we are. She turned to face the young ensign. You want to know the real secret? It's not about being fearless. It's about being so terrified you can't sleep and choosing to fight anyway. That's what makes us human. That's what they'll never understand. Sarah nodded slowly, processing this. The galaxy is full of species stronger than us, older than us, more advanced than us, Maya continued. But we learn faster. We adapt better. We find ways to fight when fighting seems impossible. That's humanity's real weapon, not tactics or technology, but refusal to give up. As they walked away from the observation window, Sarah noticed crew members saluting Maya, but it wasn't the standard military salute. It was different fist over heart, then open palm toward her. What's that salute? Sarah asked. Maya smiled sadly. Something that started during the Battle of Earth. My crew was exhausted, terrified, fighting battles they shouldn't have survived. Someone started doing that as salute. That meant, I'm afraid. But I'm still here. It spread. It's beautiful, Sarah said. It's human, Maya replied. Later that evening, Maya stood alone in the communications room, where she had first heard the screams from Harmony Colony. 3 years had passed since that day. The scared novice, who had broken every rule to save lives, had become the symbol of humanity's determination to survive. The code names would outlive her. Ashmaker. Ghost who poisons stars. The pattern. Seer. Future enemies would speak those names with fear, but Maya Chen knew the truth. She was just one person who refused to let people die when she could do something to stop it. One person who chose to fight impossible odds because the alternative was surrender. The galaxy had given her codenames in terror, but she remained what she had always been, a human being who cared about protecting others, who carried the weight of every life lost, who fought not because she was fearless, but because fear had never stopped her from doing what needed to be done. That was the real lesson. She would teach the next generation, not tactics or strategy, but the simple truth that humanity's greatest strength had always been the refusal to give up. Outside the station, stars burned in the endless dark, and somewhere out there, future enemies were already learning to fear a species that had been in space for less than 50 years, but had proven they would fight by any means necessary to survive. The novice's journey had become legend. But legends, Maya knew, were just stories people told about ordinary humans who refused to be ordinary when it mattered most.